goals and the objectives of Krav Maga are very different than like a regular martial arts. In our world, what we're dealing with is we're walking to our car one evening and somebody jumps out from behind another car and attacks us, right? And that's our starting point. There's no referee, there's no rules. The only rule is to survive and get home.
Hey everyone, you're watching the Lively Charleston Podcast. Our goal with the show is to interact with and tell the stories of the amazing people, places, and businesses that make Charleston the best city in the world.
If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube.
And check us out on Instagram and Facebook where we post content regularly throughout the week. Thanks so much, guys. Hope you enjoy the episode.
To say I'm excited about this episode's guest is an understatement. He is a true rags to riches story who comes from humble beginnings. He spent his childhood living and fighting in Mexico City, where he truly learned from the school of hard knocks. As an adult, he created a successful career in medical sales, but when life threw him and his family a curveball, he used his passion for martial arts and started his first dojo. After 30 years of instructing hundreds of students to black belts and at other advanced degrees, he has been recognized by the martial arts community by being inducted into the Martial Arts Hall of Fame not only once, but twice. Mm-hmm. It is my pleasure to introduce a total badass and an all-around good guy, the owner of Mount Pleasant Krav Maga, Master Keith Klok.
Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for being here today.
Sure.
And I know everyone who's watching, not everyone, but a lot of people are going to go like, what is Krav Maga?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that a lot because it's, even though it's becoming more popular, a lot of people aren't aware of what Krav Maga is. So Krav Maga literally means in Hebrew, contact combat. Okay, so that's, the Israelis have developed this system as part of their IDF defense system, which is their military branch, right? So they have basically several components. One would be Krav Maga, and then they get into the firearms, the 9mm and the rifles and things like that, right? Knives, things. So Krav Maga pertains to the hand-to-hand portion of the IDF's system, right?
Okay.
So that's what Krav Maga is basically self-defense. It's pure self-defense. It's not a martial art per se. Mm-hmm. When I say that, it's not like an Asian martial art. It's very different. The goals and the objectives of Krav Maga are very different than like a regular martial arts.
Right.
So, like I was explaining, you have the difference between hand-to-hand combat and self-defense, right?
Okay.
And a good example, as I was telling you earlier, was, for example, roundhouse kick, right? If I throw a roundhouse kick, right, if I go into a match, I'd better know how to use a roundhouse kick, and I better know how to defend against a roundhouse kick.
You're talking about like a martial arts tournament,
like
right?
a tournament,
okay.
A match, MMA, UFC, whatever, right?
Yep.
But if you're in a bar fight, you can ask yourself, how many times have you seen somebody throw a roundhouse kick in a bar fight? Doesn't happen very often.
No.
Very, very rare.
No.
So that's kind of highlights a little bit, and then it also goes further, like something like you see somebody like a BJ Penn, who, again, I'm a big fan of BJ Penn.
Yeah,
right?
me too.
You know, big fan. But there was a recent YouTube video where he got knocked out at a bar, right? And if he was in the octagon against this guy 10 out of 10 times, BJ Penn takes him down.
Right.
But in this particular scenario in the bar, he didn't have good self-defense tactics, and he got taken down. So that kind of shows a little bit the difference between hand-to-hand combat and self-defense, yeah? And in hand-to-hand combat, you got two guys who are skilled, about even skill. They're both black belts or whatever. They're in a ring. It's a match. You got a referee. You got rules, and they all know what's about to go down as it goes down, right? In our world, what we're dealing with is we're walking to our car one evening, and somebody jumps out from behind another car and attacks us, right? And that's our starting point. There's no referee. There's no rules. The only rule is to survive and get home, get out of there as quick as possible.
So it was probably, and to probably do the most damage as possible in that time, or escape. Is that right?
Well, the objective, I mean, it is a very aggressive. You get into a very aggressive mindset, and again, it's a controlled mindset, but it's a mindset that when it's go time, you turn that switch, and then you're in 100%. You don't hold anything back because, again, it's for survival, right? This isn't a tournament. You're not fighting for a trophy. You're literally fighting for your life or the life of your loved ones, right? So there are no rules. Again, you got to go all out. You're all in.
Yep. A lot of people don't know this, but my son, Rhett, is one of your pupils or students, and he actually came home from one of your classes one day and wrote on my whiteboard. I have a whiteboard in my closet where I write about my morning routine, goals, all that stuff. And he wrote down this saying. He said, "It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war."
Yeah.
And that spoke to me big time. And it was interesting. I don't know. I've never asked him why he put that in there, but I have been studying and practicing yoga for a little while.
Okay.
And maybe he just thought like, no, Dad, you need to go this route, right? You need to be, because I am. It's like weird. I've been in this like Zen part of my life or something like that where I'm kind of searching. But that's where I've ended up. But here recently, I have come to like, just find out that I need some more aggression in my life, right? I'm looking for more competition, more aggression. Sure. So it sounds like, Mount Pleasant Krav Maga would be a great place to go.
Well, yeah, and I don't know if I would use the word aggression as something.
Okay.
Again, we are looking, this is strictly self-defense. We're not going to go initiate anything or looking for trouble, right? We would all, one of my instructors in Israel would say, the best Krav Maga student is the student that never has to use the skills.
Awesome.
Right? Never has to hit anybody or anything. Can get out of it. And that's your first line of defense is try to defuse the situation without resorting to violence, right?
Right.
But sometimes you're in a situation where you have no choice, right? If somebody attacks you, they're already on you, they're doing something, maybe they're trying to steal something from you or whatever. And so now you're put in a situation where you have to survive. And sometimes the only way to survive is to resort to a physical solution, right?
Yeah.
So that's just, so I don't want folks to get the wrong idea that we don't want to teach people to be aggressive,
right. And that's my bad, but yeah.
No, but and that's, it's a fine line. Mm-hmm. And it kind of further illustrates why we don't teach very young children, because they lack the maturity to understand that. To draw that line. When do I turn it off? When do I turn it on? Right.
Yeah.
You turn it on when you need it, but you don't want to have to be in that state where you're running around looking for, you're in this aggressive state. That's not the goal.
Right.
But you have it in your pocket. You have that reserve in your pocket when you need it.
Yeah.
That's the kind of
Flip the switch.
Flip the switch when you need it. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Is there any certain time that you can tell us about, like that you've felt like you might need to use it, or just you were like on just high alert?
Well, if you're just talking about high alert, yes. I went on a trip to South Africa. I spent some time there visiting another friend, and I got to tell you, walking around some of those streets down in South Africa was high alert, and it was an eye-opening experience. I mean, I'd had the experience as a kid growing up in Mexico, but I'd never really had, I guess, being removed from it for a while, living in the States and back in the States and all that, and then going back to South Africa and being in this environment, walking into that constant state where you're on high alert, right?
Yeah.
And it was a very eye-opening experience, because what it brought to my mind, what I thought was, as I was going through this experience, I was like, there are people, especially women, who walk around every day like this in our country, right?
Right.
People that walk around in fear.
Yeah.
And it's a palpable thing, and it's a crushing thing, right? So that's one of the things about what I love, what I do, is try to empower, give these folks the tools to empower them so they don't have to walk in fear anymore, right? And they're prepared. Because if you fear what you don't understand. So the more you understand something, the less fear you're going to have, right? The more prepared you are for the eventuality of something like that.
Right.
And unfortunately, the statistics are for women in this country that most women will experience some kind of an assault at least 3 times in their lifetime. That's a pretty
That's high.
That's a huge number, right? So, I get a lot of women that have already experienced this, and they're coming in, and, you can see the effect that has on somebody. It's a big effect. So to be able to turn it around and to empower them and give them the confidence, that's huge.
I have met 1 or 2 of your female students, and they said it's changed their life.
That's excellent.
They really are.
Yeah.
And they just have like an air of confidence about them, or they're just not as frightened to go out and live their lives.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So I wanted to touch on a little bit, kind of going backwards a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You grew up in Mexico. Mm-hmm. I've talked to your brother about this one time too, and he said that you guys, tell me about living in Mexico City as in your youth. What was that about?
Well, we moved there. I'm originally from New York City. We moved there. I was about 8 when we moved there. And it was a very different culture than when we were growing up in the States, obviously, when we got there. And for me, from my part, I mean, I was kind of right away the subject of a lot of racial tension or violence towards me. Because I'm American, blah, 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 I stand out in the crowd. So right away, especially in the schools I was going to, in the Mexican schools that I attended, it was right away I was a target. So it was tough. It was tough. I mean, I was a lot of fights on the streets and stuff, having to defend myself. And usually against multiple attackers, more than one, because I'm bigger. I was bigger just by size, which is naturally bigger. So and so then they'd come in and they'd target you, and they wouldn't come by themselves. They'd have their buddy with them or a couple buddies, and we're going to take this gringo out, that kind of thing. So it was tough. But, again, there were a lot of great things about Mexico, too. So it was, a double-edged sword. I mean, I loved it. I wouldn't trade it in for anything. It gave me a very unique experience growing up. There was many wonderful things about growing up in Mexico as well. Yeah. Especially at that time. It was a beautiful place. So, but it was definitely unique.
Did those times kind of push you towards martial arts?
Most definitely. And it's funny because there was a karate studio maybe 2 blocks from my house, and I was dying to go there, but I got into so many fights. My mother was really afraid, and she said, "No, you can't go, because if you learn to actually to fight, you're going to hurt. You can probably kill somebody." And she was afraid to death. Because she thought I was crazy. There's no way. Yeah. And I think what she misunderstood was I was in such an aggressive mode at the time, was mostly for survival for myself. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like I was looking for fights. They were, every time I walk out of a grocery store, here they are, circling me around and start pushing me around, and here we go, that kind of thing. So you get into a mindset as either you live in fear or you decide, I'm just going to hit this head on, right? Yeah. You find out real quick if you're a willow or you're an oak. Right. So in my case, I was like, hell, I'm going all in. And, I didn't know any Krav Maga or anything at the time, and I just knew crazy. That was it. Yeah. That was
it. Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. So, I guess it'd be safe to say that your upbringing, just like a lot of people's, kind of formed you through the crucible of like who you are today, whether, it socially, and business wise, and just how you carry yourself alone. Because Lord knows we're going to face hard times, right? And I've had this conversation with some people. I had a pretty easy upbringing. I was kind of like, I grew up in suburbia, kind of like where we are now. I really did. Mm-hmm. I was an athlete. I did well in certain things, and but as life got harder and harder, I didn't know how to react as well. I started to fold a little bit. I could admit that. Like, my golden child years did not serve me all that well into adulthood. I had to kind of go through a harder crucible at an older age. Yeah. And so it's just interesting how people have different upbringings and how it kind of can
mold you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It can mold you for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so yeah, I think definitely what you do helps protect people. And so I urge people like anywhere around here to kind of just maybe challenge themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also why I made the transition, because I had for many years just taught traditional martial arts. Mm-hmm. And one thing I noticed in my martial arts studio was mostly I had a lot of kids, I had a lot of adults, but they were mostly adults that were like kind of in the prime of their physical prowess. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these men and women that were training with me probably could have already defended themselves before they got to the school, right? And they were athletic, they were in great shape, they were more athletic type people. Right. And I, even though I feel, I did them a great service and a lot of good things came from that, I said, I'm missing a huge swath or portion of the population, right, that may not be able to physically do something like karate or jujitsu or something like that. They don't have the physicality, but they still need to know how to defend themselves. Maybe probably even more so, right? These are the people that I wasn't feeling like I was reaching, you know? And when I finally got introduced to Krav Maga, I said, here's something that I can get these folks to learn that doesn't require the physical prowess of some of these other martial arts that anybody can perform, because that's kind of how it was the inception of Krav Maga, right?
Right.
When they first started Krav Maga, which is Emil Lichtenfeld started it 73 years ago in the formation of Israel, he was being threatened by attack by the neighboring Arab countries, and he was given the task to train the Israeli people. Well, they had all just come out of concentration camps, most of them, right?
Right.
So they were in deplorable physical shape, and they were going to fight at armies, right?
Yeah.
Hand-to-hand
How
combat.
could they do that? You know, they're all malnourished and you know, just
terrible.
Wow.
So he had to train every man, woman, and child how to defend themselves against an invading army, and he had limited time. Right, he didn't have the luxury of 6 years of them getting their black belts or whatever. So he had to come up with a formula. It had to be simple techniques but effective, right? And this is kind of the birth of Krav Maga. And then over 70 years that the country has meticulously studied hand-to-hand combat in one of the most violent environments on planet Earth, they've developed this, what is, if you Google it, one of the top self-defense systems, if not the top self-defense system in the world, used by more military and special forces around the world, and police forces. So when I discovered this and I started understanding how it works, I said, man, this is something I really need to get involved in. Got my passions going on it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's fantastic. And I got to ask you a few questions before this, and you studied martial arts, and you had somebody who like really influenced you throughout your life. Can you tell me about that?
Well, I mean, I have several influencers.
A big influence. So.
Well, I mean, obviously Bruce Lee was what started me down martial arts road. Again, living in Mexico, constantly having to fight on the streets and stuff. I went to my first Bruce Lee movie, right? It was Return of the Dragon. With Chuck Norris and stuff. So I go in there, and when I see this guy burst out in a back alley with his nunchucks and take out 10 guys, I'm like, okay, I need to learn this. I'm like, wow, holy cow. Yeah. It was like, but that was, and then of course I started studying martial arts once I moved back to the States, and I started learning the Grandmaster Bai in traditional Cho's Taekwondo. And I started doing that, stayed with him for many, many years. And I gravitated to other martial arts as well as jiu-jitsu. We did some jiu-jitsu with Hoist Gracie. I see that you have a Gracie school right here, which is great. So I'm hoping that Hoist will stop by. I got to find out when he's going to be in town and say hello to him. But, I studied with different masters over the years. So there's a lot of influences, and I've taken little bits and parts from different people. I did the Wing Chun for a while, learned from Duncan Leong, Sifu Duncan, who was Bruce Lee's best friend growing up in Chinatown and in Hong Kong. So, some great influences. And I couldn't really pin just one, but all these martial artists had tremendous impacts on me.
Right. So all you listeners out there and people watching, he's the real deal. You've been around. I mean, you've been to Israel, you've been to Brazil, and studied with the top guys. And going back to Krav Maga, I guess is there some other ways of teaching it? Or, I mean, you were telling me that this is the Israeli way that and you teach. Right.
Well, so when I started, I guess early on in my martial arts experience, I noticed a lot of these martial arts were getting fractured. People were going off and doing kind of their own thing. And I always got into martial arts. I wanted the pure. I was always looking for the purity. What is the real way? What is the most genuine, right? Like if I'm going to do karate, I'm going to do Shotokan. I want to learn real Shotokan karate or Ishinryu or something like that, not something made up, right? Same thing in Taekwondo and Jiu-Jitsu, right? I wanted to know from the source, what is the actual technique, right?
Yep.
And same thing with Krav Maga. So I studied Krav Maga in the Krav Maga, American Krav Maga Association under Marty Cal, Professor Cal out of Arkansas. I started with him. I started training. And he took the time to go to Israel himself and teach the authentic Israeli Krav Maga. When it came time for me to test for my expert level 1, which is like master level, I went to Israel, spent a month there, and trained with their top instructors there. Because I wanted to not only see how they did it themselves, but also to immerse myself in the culture and understand the people and the culture behind the art, right?
Yep.
So that's what here in the States, the problem is there's no oversight. Yeah, there's no oversight. Mm-hmm. It's not like a doctor or somebody, you can get sued for malpractice. Anybody can put a plaque on their wall and claim they're the Grand Master of whatever, and go, right? But I wanted to make sure it was authentic. So to your question, there's only one system of Krav Maga. Like if you go to Israel, right? Every man and woman that serve, women do 2 years, men do 3 years. They have to serve. They all learn Krav Maga when they serve. They all learn the same thing.
Yep.
You open a studio in Israel, you better be teaching what they learned in the military, because they're going to walk in with their kids and going to say, okay, that's BS, I'm walking out. Unfortunately, we don't have that here in the United States. Matter of fact, people don't even really know what IDF Krav Maga, really Israeli Krav Maga is.
Okay.
So you have a lot of guys who because Hollywood has made it sexy and it's a great marketing thing, and it's trending, so people put a plaque on say Krav Maga, right? And they just teach self-defense of whatever. But they're not doing the actual system that is taught in Israel. There's a very specific techniques and very specific system that they use, which is very different than a martial arts studio than traditional Japanese martial arts.
Okay.
So there's definitely a one style. It's one system.
Okay. So that's the hand-to-hand combat.
Right.
Krav Maga. What is, because I know my son has mentioned classes that you do also with firearms.
Right.
Things like that. What is that called?
So we do Israeli tactical shooting.
Okay.
In Israel, they have basically the handgun, the semi-automatic handgun, and then the rifle, which would be your tactical rifles like your AR-15 or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. So they have a very specific system that they use. It's a little different than the American system. The way they hold the gun is a little different. They use the baseball method versus the 2 thumbs down the bottom of the slide. They do a slingshot method. Again, they don't carry one round in the pipe, in the barrel. So this gives an extra layer of safety if you're a concealed carrier, things like that. And learning how to use a slingshot method so you charge the weapon as you draw the weapon is one of the techniques they use. But there are very specific techniques, and they use the same approach that they use in their hand-to-hand combat, the way they teach the hand-to-hand, the Krav Maga. They use the very similar approach to their weapons, their handgun and the rifle. Same kind of training system, so that it becomes muscle memory, it becomes second nature, and you become very, very efficient at it. Yeah.
It sounds super efficient. So I guess they really, really study the best moves as far as like how your body moves and how quick you can move and things like that. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. They actually study every time there's a situation that involves an Israeli soldier, whether it be hand-to-hand or whatever. They do a big dossier on it, right? What happened? Who threw the punch first? Who did this? Who did that? What was the result?
Yeah.
Was it user error? Did the guy make a mistake? Or was it the technique that probably was flawed? Do we need to tweak it? Do we need to change it? Is there a better way to do this? Then they constantly re-examine and republish. So Krav Maga is constantly evolving, right? And then they also go take it a step further, like, what are they seeing more of? Are they seeing more knife attacks? Are they seeing more gun attacks? Are they seeing more hand-to-hand attacks? What's going on out there? Right, it's kind of like a bellwether. So then they prepare for that eventuality, right? What's the trend?
Right.
With, unfortunately, to say violence. What's going on with the violent world, right? How do we trend and how do we prepare for this trend?
Yeah.
So things evolve in Krav Maga, and I've been in Krav Maga now almost 10 years, and in the 10 years we've had multiple tweaks, adjustments, little things that we've changed and tweaked and changed. So this is one of the nice things that I maintain constant communication with my instructors in Israel, because they're constantly emailing me. They check I'll send things on social media. They'll look at my video or something and say, okay, this is right, this is wrong, tweak this, tweak that, change this, change that. Oh, by the way, this is what's going on. We need you to start focusing on this kind of thing.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's so neat to know that. All right. Well, cool. There was something... one of your favorite quotes, "Be like water."
Yes.
As a Bruce Lee quote. And I remember this. I mean, I was a big fan of Bruce Lee as well. But it was a newer movie, and it wasn't Bruce Lee. He wasn't even in it. It was, I forget one of the actors' names, but what was the name of that one? It was something dragon.
Oh, the one where he quotes the water?
Yeah.
Return of the Dragon?
Return of the Dragon, which I thought was a great movie as well.
Yeah.
But tell me about that. I know that, we've been through some crazy times. I think you opened your studio, 2018?
Yeah, I opened it in September of 19.
Of
just
19.
before the pandemic hit.
Just for a pandemic.
5 months before the pandemic hit.
So
yeah.
Tell me what Be Like Water means to you.
Oh man, I'll tell you. So water is formless, right? Shapeless, right? Yep. So like the quote says, it's actually from a Zen proverb, right? That Bruce Lee was quoting. But if you put water in a teacup, it becomes the teacup. If you put the water in the teapot, it becomes the teapot, right? So water is formless, it's shapeless, right? It moves, it changes, it adapts, right? And this is the same. So this can be applied to not just a fighting, right, where you're moving and you're changing with what's going on in that fight, but life, right? Because life is a struggle, right?
Absolutely.
You were saying earlier, right? It's a struggle. So being able to change, right, with life, as life throws you, like the pandemic, for example, right?
Right.
Some people were destroyed. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got to learn to adapt. It's just like trying to fight a tidal wave, right? You can't beat that, right? It's out of your control. But you got to learn to adapt, change, be flexible, right? Yep. And I learned this at an early age because we went through a very similar thing in Mexico with financially with the Mexican Depression. My stepfather lost everything, right? And it devastated, crushed him, and he was never the same man after it. And I swore to myself when I learned from this, I said, if this happens to me one day, I'm not going to let it defeat me. Yep. And so the same thing is like whenever there's a major, change, like the Tao, right? We say change in the Tao, you shift with it. You don't try to fight it, or if you're so rigid in your viewpoints, right? You're inflexible. You're going to break. Mm-hmm. You're going to break because there's no way. I mean, how can you fight something like a pandemic, right? It's a global pandemic. I mean, what are you going to do? You got to go roll with it. They shut everything down.
With it,
right?
Like water,
right? You can be like water, or it'll destroy you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that saying. I do.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Something you would tell your younger self if you go back in time.
Oh, boy. There's a lot of things I tell my younger self. I would say be more assertive or more...
confident, maybe?
More confident. Yeah, more confident. I remember when I opened my first dojo, I moved very slowly, slowly building. I could have moved quicker. I could have gone to the bigger building, the better location faster, sooner. I was being too conservative, right? Because I was, I had a family and everything, so I was having to be cautious with my moves and stuff. Sure. But from a business aspect, man, I could have gotten further quicker if I had taken some bolder steps early on, right?
Yeah.
So looking back, I said, wow, man, I could have definitely done that a little more aggressively.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think most people can. Whenever you start something that carries that much weight, you're timid, you know. But you can always. What hindsight's always 20/20. Yeah. For sure. Well, how can our listeners best find you and locate you?
Well, you can go on Google or Google us. Our website is www.mountpleasantkravmaga.com. Very simple, yeah. Or you can go on Facebook, same thing, Mount Pleasant Krav Maga. Any of those two sources, you'll find us. You can just look us up, Google us. So it's pretty easy to find us. We're right over here off of 17, right in the town center. So I got a big flag flying in there. On the road there. So,
and a truck driving around.
Yeah, my truck. You'll see my truck driving around. Yeah, it's pretty
Absolutely.
much a nice
Well, awesome, man. Now people know you're a really nice guy. You're not so scary.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah. and it's interesting, and this is one of my hurdles.
Yeah.
Because, again, going back to ladies that have experienced trauma, assaults and things like this, they walk into the studio or something and they see me, and, they go, oh, my gosh, this guy, They get a little intimidated,
right?
And so it's trying to breach that, get their confidence, come on in. It's cool. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to teach you. I'm a teacher. I'm here to help you.
Yep.
And trying to get that message across is one of my greater challenges because people make assumptions on your appearance. They see you. They see you or whatever, and they make an assumption, right?
Yep.
And a lot of it might be based on a past experience they had or past trauma. So it's getting past that. So they take this first step. Yeah.
Yep. I totally get it. Well, I hope this bridges some gaps for everybody. Man, Keith, thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you.
Everybody, ladies, gentlemen in the area, you got to check out Mount Pleasant Krav Maga. Believe me, it will challenge you, but I think it will be a great step towards a lot of different things for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, man, thank you so much, brother. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Hey y'all, that's a wrap on today's episode. Thanks so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like or follow or subscribe, whatever platform you're on, just hit the button to make sure you don't miss any future episodes.
Yep, and please help us grow the channel by sharing it with someone else who might enjoy it as well. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.